choice in a must-win game. And it's handshakes, and we're off with the Armageddon.
We're off with the Armageddon. We see a handshake in Magnus against Abdusattorov, and it looks like an E4 opening here.
And something else we notice is somebody checking off move numbers. And why is that important, everybody? At move 60, their increment begins. They get 1 second added per move. So you see people standing with score sheets just checking off each move that's played.
Important stuff, and the players will be looking over. They will be seeking reassurance later that they are gaining that increment at move 60. And in the meantime, some very quick moves, almost a replica of their earlier game. Magnus here, I'm really surprised, I've got to say, playing right down the line that gave Nordebek a draw earlier in the day. I think he just wants another long manoeuvring battle, Magnus Carlsen, but no surprises here. Nothing new under the sun in this one, as both players getting off to a fast start.
It seems like they're very familiar with one another, and you see Nordebek doing his patented stare. He looks up at Magnus saying, "What do you want from me?" Now Magnus is the one on the clock. So Tanya, in the early stages, it seems like, even if we haven't looked at the position yet, advantage in favor of Nordebek.
Especially because Magnus is the first to slow down. And the one thing when you're playing against Magnus is you cannot allow that to get into your head, the fact that you're playing against world number one. And I think that's exactly what this younger generation does so well.
Kind of accelerated rook lift in that one with a white rook landing on h5, but we'll get to that. This is Magnus Carlsen against Abdusattorov, and quiet stuff. I did check, we're now at move 20. For the first 16 moves, this was an exact replica of their earlier game, but Nordebek was the first one to launch a surprise, putting the black knight on b6, forcing Magnus to think. And in the meantime, we look at the clock. It's about a 3.5 minute difference here, so less than it was to start the game. It looks like Abdusattorov in his comfort zone.
There's some tactical opportunities for sure later in the game if white plays knight d5, opening up that bishop to slice across the board. But what I like about Magnus's position is the knight on b6 is restricted by that pawn on b3. A pawn 3 squares away from a knight usually wins that showdown. And you see Nordebek, he is thinking on Magnus's clock.
Yeah, he's thinking on Magnus's clock. And I think the last move that he made is the rook lift to d7. We see it on our live board right now. And Magnus is the one with head in hands, trying to figure out a way forward. And I think the idea that Nordebek has here is to try to transfer the queen to the king side with queen e8 and queen g6. And that's why Magnus is going for this queen side break, creating chances on the other flank.
Yeah, he's trying to open up the position, trying to at least for the first time make Abdusattorov think here. It's starting to get tactical. It's really coming to life, this position. I've said it before, Armageddon chess, there's two strategies with white. Either you go really direct, really test your opponent from the off, or you keep as many pieces on the board as possible and only later change the pace of the game. Magnus has gone for that latter strategy. Finally, he is initiating some tension, some threats. Robert mentioned a white knight planting itself in the center on the d5 square, and Abdusattorov, he has to act energetically to fend off that threat.
But the problem is he doesn't have so much time, because he may have to make a critical moment and only spend 30 seconds, where in a classical game he might spend 30 minutes. I mean, we see this position here, knight e3 to d5. That looks extremely tempting as white's next turn, because you are just throwing your knight in the opponent's rook's face. Please, please, please take me on that square and open up some diagonals and files for my pieces. This type of position, it looks very difficult for black. The eval bar may not be as impressed as I am, but I think Magnus feels comfortable right now with the white pieces.
Wow, and he's landed a knight. I'm really surprised Abdusattorov allowed this one. But, OK, he's trying to trade off pieces. Later, he'll try and evict this knight with a pawn. And Magnus, meanwhile, preventing that. He's putting pressure on this black knight to stop the black c-pawn from ever moving. This knight, it looks like a granite statue right now in the center of the board. It's super powerful, and pressure on black. This one looks easy to play for white, but really far from clear what Abdusattorov should be doing.
I don't like black's position, and you may want to play c6, you're not going to get that anytime soon, as you mentioned. So I feel like white has the easier plan. Moves like bishop to a5, the bishop on d2, not doing so much on its current square. So I really like Magnus' position, and his 4-minute lead on the clock is also something I appreciate. Nearly 5 at this point.
Yeah, still far from decisive. Black is solid enough for now, but no easy moves.
I really like Magnus' position still. I don't see a plan for black. I think that being under 7 minutes and being under some duress here, Magnus in great shape.
Yeah, Magnus in great shape. He's now pausing, and then he'll switch up the pace, speed up once he's decided upon a plan. Multiple moves. Bishop to a5 I quite like from Robert. You could push the white a pawn forward. Black's knight is really unstable right now. You can trade off dark squared bishops potentially, but Magnus spoiled for choice, big time advantage. And I think a bit of a favorite right now. In this clash at least. Still quiet, but if things liven up, it should favor white.
Yeah, huge favorite, I would say. I really like this position for white. I think Nordebek, you can see his body language. He's trying to be stoic and say, I've got this, but I'm just looking at it, and I don't really see black's plan, where some of white's moves do seem much easier. And bishop a5, one of the, he might stop on b4 before eventually going to a5, but I think that black has a difficult time dealing with some of these threats, and you can never really take on d5 that just helps white.
But a minute and a half on this move, that's quite a long thing. You've got to play on the clock as well, especially with Nordebek's moves, ideas not being so clear for him. It's critical for Magnus to keep the pressure on.
Long think, strong think, maybe, if he comes up with a good move. But yeah, Magnus in the tank right now. And I like Nordebek, how he was giving Magnus a bit of a stare from time to time. He looks at the board, he stares at Magnus. He looks at the board, stares at Magnus. The mind games. Now head in hands, Abdusattorov, he's realizing that Magnus, a bit unsure about how to proceed in the end, pushing his a-pawn, very logical. A trademark of Carlsen's, pushing his flank pawns like this. But still good for white.
Love that move, because I kept looking at a bishop move. He says, let me kick that knight out of b6. We've already established that black does not want to take that knight on d5 to help white improve the pawn structure. And I'm going to play a5 next to kick your knight out of the b6 square. Really, really like how Magnus is doing this.
Yeah, simple plan and a strong plan. Just to highlight, Robert, if knight takes knight, then actually you could take in either direction right now. But at the very minimum, you can take like this, land a queen on c4, backward pawn, big targets, big advantage.
Wow. Some pressure on Nordebek in the current position. If black does try to stop the threat, you don't want to really happily put your own pawn on a5, because it can become such a big target for that bishop on d2 as well. A long-term weakness. So some difficult decisions here to be made by Nordebek. Does he allow Magnus's pawn to advance to a5, or create a weakness for himself by pushing the a pawn? We will check in on this.
I also see no pieces for black. Like, I see what he's doing, but I don't see where his pieces are, and it looks like it's a rook endgame, actually, where white is 2 pawns ahead. This has shades of Carlsen-Lazovic from the first match.
Yeah, big shades there. He was 2 pawns up as well, and not all rook endgames are drawn. This is an exception as well. White simply has too many connected pawns, too many passed pawns, and this at the elevated level these players play at is elementary stuff. White's king is simply going to join the party now. He's going to centralize Magnus. He's the king of endgames, as everyone knows. And okay, first he targets this weak black e-pawn. As long as he leaves himself with 2 extra pawns, ideally connected, Magnus is guaranteed to win this one. And look at the clock as well. Hope slipping away, hope fading now for Abdusattorov. Hopefully we get time later. There were some highlights, some tactics earlier in this game, but Magnus, full control.
When is Magnus not in control?
It's rare. Occasionally happens.
Occasionally happens, but not today, as he takes down